Hey guys, and welcome back to this channel. So the topic of today is cropping patterns. So we're gonna start by defining what it is. Cropping patterns refers to the yearly sequence and spatial arrangement of crops on a given area, and it comprises of all the growth patterns on the farm and the interaction with farm resources, household enterprise, physical, biological, technological, and social factors. So once the crops have been selected, now it is key to plan and write down your cropping pattern. This will help indicate which place will occupy which crop during which season. In this video, we're going to be discussing 4 main types of cropping patterns, which are mixed cropping, intercropping, monocropping, and crop rotations. So firstly, we're going to be talking about mixed cropping, which involves the growing of 2 or more crops in the same piece of land during one growing season. For example, growing a cereal and a legume at the same time. Advantages of mixed cropping include increase in crop yield. Since you're growing 2 or more crops at the same time that are so different, they are hardly competing for nutrients, which makes each crop grow maximum. The second advantage we're going to be talking about is minimization of pest infestation and also reduce risk of crop failure, maximum utilization of soil, and soil is maintained and improved. One of the disadvantages of mixed cropping is that it is very difficult to apply fertilizers and pesticides. Since you're growing 2 crops here which are different, each crop requires each kind of fertilizers and each kind of pesticide. So applying this is going to take more time and it's going to be very, very hard. And the second disadvantage is that cumbersome harvesting. 2 crops, 2 different species requires 2 different machines for harvesting, which is very cumbersome and time consuming. So the next cropping pattern we're going to be talking about is intercropping. It is very similar with mixed cropping in the sense that it is the growing of 2 or more crops in the same piece of land during the same season. However, in intercropping, there is a distinct, definite pattern of rows for each plant grown. And the main goal of intercropping is that it aims to achieve the highest potential yield of the field by maximizing the potential of resources present at a given time. So let's jump in and discuss the several intercropping patterns. So we're going to start by row intercropping, which is 2 or more crops that are planted in distinct rows. The second one, relay intercropping. In this one, 2 or more crops are grown at the same time as part of a life cycle of each, with the second crop sown after the first has been well established but before it reaches its harvesting stage. The third one is strip intercropping, which is the growing of 2 or more crops at the same time in separate strips wide enough apart for independent cultivation. So we're going to be talking about the advantages of intercropping. The first one, greater income, greater yield. Since you're having multiple produce, there's a very good chance of making more money. And the second one, insurance against crop damage. So when a region is vulnerable to weather extremes, for example, drought, torrential rain, hurricane, cyclone, having diverse yield can help secure income. And another advantage it is the optimum usage of soil, and the soil will be well maintained. By making use of all your land and making sure that all the ground is covered, this reduces losses due to evaporation. The main disadvantage of intercropping is that poor yields. In cases that you don't plant very well and you grow plants that compete for the same nutrients at the same time, you will increase the chances of having lower yields because this can lead to unmanageable conflict. And the second one is that there is high initial cost since you're growing all these varieties at the same time during the planting or the sowing season and ground preparation season. You're gonna incur a lot of costs. Another disadvantage is that it is difficult to harvest since you're growing again different crops which requires different machines for harvesting. It's gonna be cumbersome and time consuming. So moving on to the next cropping pattern, we're going to be talking about monocropping, which is the growing of a single crop year after year at the same land. Examples of crops that can be grown using this cropping pattern include maize, soybeans, and wheat. One of the advantages of using this type of cropping pattern includes simplicity and lowers the amount of extra land required. However, there are a lot of disadvantages related to this kind of cropping pattern. For example, the severe damage of soil quality. Since you're growing only one kind of crop, it's only extracting the same kind of nutrients at the same time. And with time, these nutrients are going to be depleted. And you're going to be relying most on fertilizers. Another disadvantage of monocropping is that it makes the crop susceptible to pests, and this results in the usage of harmful chemicals. And by using these harmful chemicals, if the rain falls and there is runoff and there is seepage, infiltration of this water with these harmful chemicals, this is gonna in turn damage the groundwater supplies and pollute the groundwater supplies. And by that, it also adversely alters the natural ecosystem since it's going to damage the environment. So the last cropping pattern we're going to be talking about is crop rotation, which is a cropping pattern where crops are rotated at regular intervals and different crops are planted on each seasonal cycle. These are the advantages. There is increase in crop yield, there is reduced risk of pests and diseases, reduced pollution, improved soil structure, increases soil fertility, and reduced erosion. Another advantage of crop rotation is that it is a good move towards climate change mitigation. So since we are rotating our crops, which means we are maintaining the nutrients and the soil, we no longer have to rely on fertilizers, which are the number one emitters of greenhouse gases, nitrous oxide, which is very harmful to the environment. So by rotating these crops, we are maintaining the natural balance of the nutrients and the soil, so we don't have to rely on these fertilizers, on these nitrous fertilizers. So which means we are actually safeguarding our climate. Before we call it a day, these are other factors to consider during cropping pattern planning: the time needed for land preparation, time needed for harvest, planting and transplanting dates, the length of the period that the crop will be on the ground. So these factors will give you a clear picture of the yearly cropping pattern. So it is very important to consider these factors. So I hope you've learned a lot from this video and you have enjoyed it. Thank you. Subscribe to my channel. I'll see you next time.